Okay, so a foundational point in developing the roadmap was getting to agreement on a North Star. This North Star served as the vision for the future, was what this roadmap is pointing to. The North Star reads, by 2050, pest management approaches in agricultural and urban contexts in California will promote human health and safety, ecosystem resilience, agricultural sustainability, community well-being, and economic vitality. The implementation of these approaches will help steward the state's natural and cultural resources, enabling healthy lives for all and an abundant, healthy food supply for future generations.
Arvin.
It's important to understand that work group members sometimes had opposing viewpoints about how to best reach this North Star, and there were times where members struggled to reconcile their divergent thinking. However, the roadmap reflects the members' work to identify solutions that everyone was willing to work with. However, it's critical to say that that doesn't mean that every member valued each goal or each recommendation equally. However, the group did agree that as a whole, the roadmap works to provide a holistic, system-wide approach to accelerating safer, more sustainable pest management. Okay, so the roadmap was released with a set of recommendations in January of 2023. And it included two key high-level goals that were to be achieved by the year 2050. Those goals were first to eliminate high-risk pesticides, which are called priority pesticides in the roadmap. And then secondly, to make sustainable pest management the everyday way of managing pests for everyone across all settings and all industries. Many people ask, why was the year 2050 selected? The work group recognized that system-wide change takes time. In order for this to happen, there's a need to develop safer alternatives to priority pesticides as a critical part of driving the transition process. However, in order to meet the long-term 2050 goals, the roadmap also outlines near-term goals that are needed to get this work started today and to help drive the progression towards those 2050 goals. It is important to remember when considering all of the goals of the roadmap that an important and priority outcome of these 2050 goals is the elimination of the adverse human health and environmental impacts that are associated with pesticide use. So let's talk a little bit about priority pesticides. The roadmap defines priority pesticides as a subset of high-risk pesticides. The work group members had a range of opinions about how to approach defining priority pesticides. Although they weren't able to come to a consensus on a formal definition for the term priority pesticide, they did find agreement around the concept that such pesticides are those that pose high risk. From that common ground, the work group went on to define high-risk pesticides as active ingredients and/or formulations or uses that are highly hazardous, that pose a likelihood of or are known to cause significant or widespread human and/or ecological impacts from their use. With that definitional framework, the roadmap also outlines specific criteria to apply in classifying priority pesticides, and that includes hazard and risk classifications, the availability of effective alternative products or practices, and it also includes special consideration of pest management situations that potentially cause severe or widespread adverse impacts. Another thing that is important to bear in mind is that priority pesticides will be identified with a multi-stakeholder Sustainable Pest Management Priorities Advisory Committee. And forming that committee is one of the next steps in that we're working on towards implementation. Okay, so with that, I will give you just a brief orientation to the roadmap because it is a large document and it's helpful to understand the structure. In addition to the North Star, the definition of sustainable pest management, and the top-level 2050 goals, the roadmap also includes 5 keystone actions. These are urgent and foundationally critical and interconnected actions that need to occur in order to move forward towards the success of those 2050 goals. It includes 11 leverage points. These are specific points in the system where sustained and focused effort was determined to be needed in order to help move progress towards this intended transition. The roadmap also includes a set of goals. It has 7 goals that are aimed at advancing sustainable pest management generally across the board. It includes 9 goals that are specifically aimed at advancing sustainable pest management in agricultural contexts, and 4 goals that are specifically aimed at advancing sustainable pest management in urban contexts. In addition to that, it includes a whole host of priority actions that are recommended to support the achievement of the goals. Okay, for the next 5 slides, I will focus on the keystone actions identified in the roadmap, because these are the basic themes that everything in the roadmap is built on to help drive this transition. The first keystone action is to prioritize prevention. As you can imagine, if there are less pests, then there will be less need for pesticide use. So prevention is a critical action. The goal here is to strengthen California's commitment to pest prevention in 2 fundamental ways. First, we want to proactively prevent the establishment of new invasive pest species through a significant expansion of the state's biosecurity and invasive pest mitigation system. And then secondly, we want to proactively eliminate pest-conducive conditions, both in agricultural and urban settings. And eliminating pest-conducive conditions includes considering how climate change impacts pest pressures. Okay, the next keystone action is to coordinate state-level leadership. We understand that transitioning to safer, sustainable pest management will require collaboration between many state agencies. And so our work here will include creating an accountable and connected leadership structure that embeds sustainable pest management principles across agencies, enhancing DPR's ability to champion sustainable pest management practices in both urban and agricultural settings, and promoting the development of alternatives to priority pesticides by encouraging research and innovation. The next critical component or keystone action is to invest in building sustainable pest management knowledge in both agricultural and urban pest management. In order to progress towards safer pest management, education is required for the people that use pesticides to ensure that everyone knows what sustainable pest management is and how to implement it. This is intended to be accomplished by significantly reinvesting in sustainable pest management focused research and outreach so that all pest management practitioners have equal and adequate access to the support and the resources that are necessary to develop and implement their own sustainable pest management systems in ways that effectively manage pests, minimize adverse impacts to humans and the environment, and that are also economically viable. In the context of agricultural pest management, this will include securing a significant increase in sustainable pest management trained technical advisors and funding for sustainable pest management research and outreach. And it includes adding human capacity for those programs in ways that reflect and serve the diversity of California's farms and agricultural producers. In terms of urban pest management, this includes expanding funding and infrastructure for urban sustainable pest management research, innovation, and outreach to align with and reflect the volume and the impacts of pesticides used in urban contexts. This requires providing adequate, dedicated annual funding for urban-focused academics, research, and extension. The next keystone action is to improve California's pesticide registration processes and bring more alternative products to market. We understand that there will always be pests that need to be managed in both agricultural and urban settings, and the transition to safer pest management is going to require new, safer technologies and products to manage them. So this keystone action includes improving DPR's registration review process to prioritize and to expedite safer, more sustainable alternative products, and improving DPR's processes for evaluating currently registered pesticides. Okay, the final keystone action. This is to enhance monitoring and data collection. The transition to safer pest management is going to require enhanced monitoring and data collection to improve our understanding of health and environmental impacts, and to incorporate the sustainability pillar aspects I mentioned earlier, such as human health and safety, ecosystem resilience, community well-being, and others. So enhanced data collection and monitoring will include expanding our understanding of what data means. It also includes incorporating non-traditional forms of data in our work, such as community science data, lived experiences of community members and others, as well as tribal knowledge. So in a nutshell, this keystone action will expand and fund health and environmental monitoring and data collection of health and environmental impacts to help drive regulatory decisions. So what are the next steps from here? 2050 seems like a very far off goal, but there are several interim goals we're working on right now. By 2025, as a first step in implementation, the roadmap recommends that the state develop a plan, funding mechanisms, and programs to prioritize pesticides for reduction and to support the practice change that is necessary to transition away from the use of high-risk pesticides. Our next steps are also going to include continuing broad stakeholder engagement and considering input on the prioritization of roadmap actions. We'll be adding new registration, reevaluation, and sustainable pest management leadership positions, as well as others that may be needed in the future to support priority roadmap actions. We'll be conducting a fumigant alternative study. We will also be awarding DPR integrated pest management research and alliance grants and CDFA grants to invest in the development of alternatives and the training and knowledge building around sustainable pest management tools, resources, and practices that is necessary to ensure success for this roadmap. So that was a really high-level overview of the Sustainable Pest Management Roadmap. You are encouraged and welcome to dive deeper into the roadmap content by accessing it on DPR's website. And with that, that is the total of my presentation. I'd like to thank you all for your time and your attention, and I can open the floor for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Amy. And I see Gustavo has his hand up.
I believe that you had a lot of conversations between the group, that put this together. But one of the things that came to my mind during your presentation is, about the research, looking for those new alternatives. Most of the time, we used to go to the root cause to look for the solution. In this case, going to the chemical companies to, do the research and coming up with new alternatives. And I think this is great, that you're putting this together, and I think it was really needed. But I think one of the things that we'll need to you'll need to consider is doing it in a different way, not the traditional way, because we will get the same results. If we ask the chemical companies to look for the alternatives. As of now, do you have a good idea? Who will be doing those research and evaluations and coming up with, other alternatives other than chemical companies?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking that. We have not yet, so I guess I'll start by saying that this work group was a multi-stakeholder work group, lots of different viewpoints, and there was a lot of discussion about how to source information from a wide range of places in order to expand knowledge and not just focusing on the traditional means that decisions have been made. So that is a core tenet of this process and was recognized and considered and talked about in great depth. So that is definitely going to happen. The work group did not define how anything is to happen at this point. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll be working with this multi-stakeholder advisory body that will, just like this work group, have a variety of representatives and voices at the table. And so we'll be working through them and in concert with a variety of stakeholders to work on how we go about achieving these goals. How we go about doing research, how we, begin examining the points of information that are important for us to have in order to make these decisions. So right now it's not determined, but I can say that I don't expect that research to be just funneled in one direction. This is about all hands on deck and using all the knowledge available to make the best decisions for moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think if you don't do that, just not relying on chemical industries, my fear is that I don't think these goals can be achieved. I think we need new partners, new institutions, new companies to come up with those better alternatives, to reduce the pesticide use.
We're all in this together, so that's correct.
Thank you.
Hey, Amy, in the conversation with Gustavo, you talked about the working group. Is that already an established working group, or is that a working group, or were there going to be future working groups that you're looking to establish that you're still seeking volunteers to participate in?
So the work group that I was talking about that came up with the roadmap, that was a multi-stakeholder group. That's what I described, the 25 members and the 8 additional. In terms of moving forward with prioritizing and determining how we move forward with a lot of these roadmap recommendations, what the decisions are around priority pesticides, even probably, some of the decisions about, conversation and dialogue about what are the best approaches or what are some desired approaches for moving forward. I expect a lot of that to go through the Sustainable Pest Management Advisory Committee that has not yet been formed. That's one of the next steps in implementation that we'll be looking at. It's one of the key critical steps. And so we are staging now to do that. And so we'll be examining, a range of stakeholders to include in that process, because again, we want to have as many voices at the table as are needed to help us power success towards achieving these roadmap goals. Hi, Min.
Hey, Gustavo, just to chime in on what Amy is mentioning, kind of adjacent to this, but kind of not. Our team is also working on doing a fumigants alternative study. And with that, we're actually looking at exactly what you were saying, like kind of bringing different people to the table that are not the registrants or the industry. And I think that group is a little bit independent from us And they're actually looking at, people with expertise and specializations across different agencies. I know that UC researchers are pinged on it. I know, what is it? Who are they? There's a bunch of other people that, sorry, and they're all kind of slipping my mind, but yeah, the intention is to kind of build out a bigger, more robust kind of background of expertise and not rely so much on, as you mentioned there, like just getting information directly from like a registrant or a company.
And Gustavo, I see your hand up. Do you want to respond to Min? I also, I see Bianca's questions too. So I can go ahead and pass to you if you want to respond to Min really quickly.
Yeah, no, just thank you for your comments. I mean, I was thinking, I was invited to participate in this group, and I, I didn't want to participate because to me it was very technical, and I think was kind of, I have a lot on my plate, and this will require, to having minimum participation will require a lot of time. But at the same time, moving forward, I was thinking, even that this is going to be, I'm assuming it's going to be very technical. I think you still need to hear from the people that is being affected, the farm workers, the rural communities, somehow, maybe not having them, maybe subgroup, not the same, big group that I'm assuming is going to be very technical, but maybe having a subcommittee from residents, from farm workers, from rural communities, not being that technical, but getting, the comments of those of us that are living, with having to deal with pesticides, day in and day out, and, trying to integrate that, what's the experience that the community have, I think there is a lot of knowledge and another things to consider also, because at the end of the day, if this is going to be successful, is not only with the support of the government agencies and the ag industry, but also the community. And community have a lot of knowledge, not asking us to be on computers and understand very technical language and all of that, but we have knowledge, the farm workers have knowledge, the rural communities have knowledge about pesticides. And I'm talking about rural, you mentioned also, like incomes and other in the cities, which I don't have much knowledge on that because that's not where I live, but maybe just moving forward, considering a kind of subcommittee of those of us that are directly experiencing the issues of pesticides, and you may find very interesting information to inform your teams moving forward. So just the suggestion, maybe a subcommittee not too technical, but getting the feedback from people directly affected from pesticides.
Absolutely, we agree. And the purpose and the point would not be to just have technical experts on this committee. It would include the public, it would include those who are affected and working and have that lived experience. So that is absolutely going to be part of the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Gustavo and Amy. And Bianca, I see you dropped a few questions in the chat. I wanted to see if you wanted to share them aloud, or if you can't unmute, I'm happy to read them for you.
I think she's having some internet issues. Maybe you want to read them to the rest of the folks.
Thank you. I was just trying to find her, but I'm not sure I see her. So the two questions I'm saying, does DPR and the Ag Commissioner have the same idea of community health as a priority? And the second question is, how does DPR measure alternative pest management, or is it just given to counties to do that work? And if it does, what is the percentage of every year does this happen in Kern?
So I will just say that in terms of the Ag Commissioner question, that we had Ag Commissioners in the work group supporting the recommendations and goals of the roadmap. And we work very closely with the commissioners. So I believe that we are in alignment with the commissioners. As far as the second question, I'm not quite sure I understand what is meant by giving alternatives pest management to the counties.
I believe she was referring to maybe Kern County coming up with its own goals, on doing more, of these new projects, the kind of the transition, does the Kern County have any plans on the for the transition of, from traditional pesticides to new alternatives? I think that was her question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So I would say again that in terms of implementing the roadmap, we're going to have to work closely with agricultural commissioners. So we, they're going to be at the table, they're a stakeholder, and they will be working with us to move forward with transition. The success of this roadmap is dependent on all of us coming together and aligning and working towards these goals and these measures. So at this point, I would say that nothing has been decided. We're at the early phases of implementation, but as we move forward, we will be working closely with commissioners and other partners, with the community, with the university system, with UCIPM, with the pest control advisors, with all the various stakeholders in the system to make sure that we are moving together towards this future and this goal.
Go ahead, Cesar.
Yeah, I noticed that as you were speaking about working with the Ag Commissioner, Glenn dropped in the chat no of DPR, and I was wondering if they could clarify that comment to see if they're unwilling to participate in this process or what they meant by no. Okay, but you do plan on working with DPR to create that plan?
We have been. This is not something that's new. This is a roadmap that DPR, as Amy mentioned, many commissioners were involved in this. We discussed it with DPR. So this isn't something that local ag commissioners come up with their own plan as far as sustainable pest management. This is a statewide initiative.
Okay, so you're working with DPR to make something specific to Kern, or would that statewide initiative be something that's broad and not specific to Kern County?
It's broad.
Are there any other ag commissioners that are working to build out their own plan, or is every ag commissioner waiting for DPR to make a statewide plan?
And I'm not sure if that might be more of like a bigger kind of effort. And I'm not sure, Amy, if you have a response to that.
I think that I would say that right now we're in the beginning stages of implementation. The roadmap was just released. We're still getting stakeholder comments. So I don't think that anyone is at the point of trying to implement a particular plan. Part of the roadmap, as I mentioned before, was about coordinating state level leadership. And I think that before local implementation occurs, that state level coordination is necessary and is going to happen, and that we will be in communication with the commissioners and the local implementers to include them in the conversations and to work on, developing like I said, a strategic collaborative effort towards moving forward in implementation.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Cesar. Do we have any other questions from the CSC about this presentation, about sustainable pest management in general? Go ahead, Gustavo.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Bianca's and Cesar's. And if I understand correctly from both of them, is trying to identify, is there something that can happen locally in support of what you are just starting? We understand that this is DPR's project. They need to come out with, these new alternatives before, and approve them and all the process. And then our commissioners will have to implement them, help support on that one. But I was thinking, are there any ag commissioners, any counties that you identified during the process coming up to this point that maybe some companies are already doing some alternatives that you will use that information to inform your goals or moving forward? Any identified projects that not necessarily, that are already working? I will say.
Yeah, no, I would say that's not the case. Like I said, we're in the early stages of discussion with stakeholders about implementation. The roadmap just came out some months ago, so we're still having a lot of conversations across stakeholder sectors. And another critical aspect here is having the resources and sort of the structure in order to create this coordination among state agencies to help develop this broad plan. And so we're really at that stage right now. For just preparing for implementation, gathering feedback, and working through a plan. And so a lot of the things that you're asking about are going to be a little bit further downstream. I would say that if you're interested in being involved, I'd encourage you to go ahead and email the contact email that is on the slide still right there, the contact us at alternatives@cdpr.ca.gov. You could indicate that you're interested in staying abreast of what's happening or potentially participating in stakeholder groups or something like that. And as we move forward, we'll be able to track that and keep information flowing out to you if you are interested. You can also always check our website. We have a sustainable pest management webpage that will have periodic updates posted on as we move forward.
Thanks, Amy. Lots of great questions, and I'm hearing generally DPR is in the early phases of implementation. So some of these questions about how this might look more locally, being implemented locally, or maybe questions about specific examples of how this is rolling out in communities are things that we can expect to hear updates on a little bit further along in the process.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, thanks. We'll look to have exciting updates from DPR regarding kind of their process of sustainable pest management in the future. If there are no questions, I can go ahead and move us along to our next agenda item. Perfect. I'm just scanning through folks and I'm not seeing any raised hands. I don't see anything in the chat. And so like Amy shared, I think there's a lot kind of looking forward and moving ahead. There are a lot of goals, like short-term goals and interim goals to kind of get us to this long-term goal in 2050 of eliminating these high-use pesticides And in something that's kind of happening in parallel that we've discussed before is the statewide notification system that DPR is looking to develop and implement to provide the public with advanced and equitable access to information on pesticide notification. And so we're super excited that DPR is here. We have a team from their compliance and their compliance and IT team are here to show us what the system is they have a demo that they want to share with folks and get some feedback on. And so for this item, I will go ahead and pass it over to, I believe, Ken.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Stephanie.
Take it away.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for letting us show you our latest version of our notification system. Sam Silva, who's also going to be co-partnering with me on this presentation. Wave your hand there, Sam, so everybody knows who you are.
Good afternoon, everybody.
He's actually our CIO, and actually is, he's going to be one showing the system and explaining how it works. But first, I just want to kind of go over overall, we received, this information or these requests a while back, and we've been working on developing this system for a few years now. We've done webinars, we've done workshops, we've done pilots as well. And so we have taken all that information and incorporated that into this system. Now, I will say the system is based on our restricted materials permit system and our notification informations, our notice of intent notices that we get. And so we are using the current restricted material program or processes to make this system functional. And for those of you who, just to clarify, restricted materials are a highly regulated pesticide here in California. They have special requirements, usually things of that nature, but they are also the ones that require a notice of application, notice of intent to be submitted to the commissioners before the application occurs. And so, again, this was a critical element for this system to work with. And, we have based this system on our restricted material system. So with that, though, after the pilots and the workshops and things of that nature we have done in the past, we've developed this new refined system. I think you're all going to, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this system already, especially on its design and its functionality. But, again, it's a much more friendly use system. Or user-friendly, should I say. It will both be in Spanish and English. It has an anonymous ability to search for NOIs in the system, but it also has emails and text messaging sign-up capability as well. So we tried to cover all gamuts here to provide everybody either anonymity to look at the system or also be able to just go ahead and have that information sent to them. It is a web-based system, and it does have a mapping tool to it. So we will be showing that to you here in a minute. And it actually has additional information on how pesticides get regulated, and that's one of the things that we're really working on right now is how do we pass this information on to you so it's understandable and you can, use this information. I will say, we have received a lot of feedback, especially on site-specific information. But again, I want to reiterate that, we're basing the system on a restricted materials system, and that is using a township range system. And we will, in our regulation packages, we are going to commit that we will look at the system a couple years down the road to see what adjustments we need to make and things of that nature. But I just want to make everybody aware that where we're going to take right now is using our township range information. And Sam will show that to you here in just a minute, so you'll have a better idea of what it actually looks like. So with that, Sam, you want to go ahead and pull up and get the system going?
Okay, hopefully you all can see that. I just need to get set up here. Perfect. Okay, again, Sam Silva. I oversee IT for Department of Pesticide Regulation. Thank you all for having us this afternoon so I can showcase this this test environment that we have right now. for the notification process. We have currently named it Spray Days. We are not locked to that, but currently we are showing this with the Spray Days logo because that is the current name we have for the system. But as Ken mentioned, one of the most critical points of feedback we received was creating a user-friendly experience and a easy to use system. So with that, we created a search bar right at the front of the system. So there's no login required. There's no real additional steps other than entering an address, and you'll be taken immediately to the map showing any NOIs within that address or near that address. And that could be a landmark, that could be a school. It uses a Google backend and a Bing backend, so it pulls up any registered address. Before I jump into the mapping function, I do want to just showcase a few other functions of the site. One being the map. You could actually click right to the map and just scroll around as opposed to searching for a specific address. Ken mentioned this also, but the more traditional notification system that we had in previous pilots is still available. So if users still want to sign up via email or text message, they're able to do so. And again, all that would be required there is either an email address, a phone number, and an address of someone's choosing, a school, for example. A information page that's really an FAQ page, a community health page to learn more about reducing exposure, and if someone were to be exposed, what actions they should take. Again, this is in draft form, so I'll show that, but note that the language in a lot of these pages is largely in draft form. And lastly, a link to our site if anyone's concerned about illegal or unsafe use of pesticides. This will link to our site directly for resources related to that, as well as a video that links to one of our YouTube videos of how a pesticide is registered. So going through that process to better understand how applicators are able to use pesticides within the state of California. So to get into the more fun part of this, I will type in an address. I use this address just as a default, and it pops it up right away. As mentioned, this autofills addresses. And I click that, and we are immediately taken to the mapping function. In this case, it is Monterey County. And as Ken mentioned earlier, this uses the township section data, which is essentially the 1 by 1 square mile section data that we pull from current processes. And you'll notice this little pin here that indicates the address that I typed in. And there are no proposed applications nearby, but there are a couple ones nearby this. So I can click on that one. And it is not wanting to load for me. Uh-oh. Let me refresh the system here. And this is why this is a test environment. Some things do not work perfect. And if there are questions along the way, feel free. And there may be an issue. I'm not sure why it's not showing. I can pull up screenshots after the demo, but essentially what this will show, and I just tested this a little while ago, so I'm not sure what's going on, but what this will show is essentially the product name, the registration number, and a few other bits of information about this application. And for some reason, like I said, my apologies, but this is a test system. And I will pull up a screen grab of what you can expect to see. And I'm going to pull into some different counties here, but for some reason, I'm not getting any data here, which is first time I'm experiencing this. So my apologies. But as you can see, so beyond the NOI data, a user can log in here to the entire map. Not log in, excuse me, just click on the entire map and they can see any county within the state of California. Click it, and then zoom on in to find out more data about that particular county. So in this case, there are a couple applications in San Benito County. So jumping out of the mapping function, since we're running into some difficulties here, my apologies again, I do want to go to the sign up page. And as you can see here, I am already logged in. So you'll see my address at samuel.silva. And this is logged in. As of right now, the system's locked down to select users within the department. And that's why you see it like this. But typically you'd see just a simple form to request an address and a phone number or an email address to sign up for notifications. The system currently allows up to 10 addresses per email or per phone number. So if you are interested in more than one address, say different schools, different landmarks, etc. around your county, you can select up to 10 at this time. Jumping over to information. So this is again just a quick FAQ about the system. So what is spray days? Some information about our restricted material process, and just various bits of information about the tool and about the restricted material process and notice of intent process that we're pulling this information from. So very robust FAQ. And lastly, we have our community health page. So as mentioned earlier, what to do if you're concerned about exposure, what to do if you are exposed, a few phone numbers and resources, including reaching out to our county ag commissioners, as well as just best practices about reducing exposure. Again, this is in very draft form, but we do want to be sure we provide this information so that we have a robust list of resources for information regarding exposure around pesticides. But with that, oh, yes.
Oh, hi, this is Stephanie from the Air District. I'm wondering if I could ask you just a couple of clarifying questions while you're on this page.
Of course.
I'm not sure if it's functional yet, but could you show us how someone would toggle to get to the page in Spanish? If that
Yes, and my apologies. I should have showed this at the top of the demo. Thank you very much. So as Ken mentioned, this is currently, we're working on English and Spanish versions of this site. So there's a toggle here. And on a mobile device, you'll also see this. So I do want to be clear that this is also mobile friendly and tablet friendly. You would simply click on this toggle, and then you would see that information switch to Spanish. So here you will see a lot of English, but at the top, you'll see some of our navigation has changed. Again, we are waiting for some of those translations, and that's why you don't see it fully translated yet. But yes, you'll simply toggle this at the top of the page, and it will turn the site into a fully translated version, which we're currently vetting content-wise. Thank you for calling that out. I meant to bring that up.
Thanks, Sam. I maybe just have a couple of clarifying questions also on the map too, if I could, and then I'm happy. I'll definitely, it sounds like we've moved to the question and answer part of the presentation.
Yes. Thank you for opening it up. Yes. I was going to say happy to do questions and answers, and I may try to ping a few folks on the back end to see if we can get the mapping checked out too while we're talking.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, can I clarify? I believe you said this, but if for all of the squares on there, if you were looking at one square, you were saying these are about a mile, the squares are a mile apart from each other, right?
That's correct.
And then is the number indicated in the center, that's the number of, you could see that number like increase if there were additional pesticide notifications, correct?
That's correct.
That number increase, and that's just indicating number within that mile of square, right?
Yeah, and you might see, I might be able to, so here's a 2. So again, apologies that the data is not showing up. One of our connections may be having issues, but you're essentially right that as this grows, I think at the most I've seen, I want to say is 3 or 4, just for me navigating the site. But yes, it will show according to how many are proposed. And Ken, on that note, again, in case I butcher this is kind of your spiel on covering the time frames of how long this data will be online.
Yes, and while I'm talking about that, why don't you switch over to the slides so we can actually show them the rest of that information, because I think that's very important for them to see that.
Yeah, let me stop sharing it while we chat, and I'll try to get at least a screenshot of this up.
So, like I said, the system is based on the restricted materials permit system, and so under that system, there are 2 different notices of intent or timeline requirements that a grower must submit their NOI. So for soil fumigants, that time frame is a 48-hour time frame. So 48 hours prior to the application, the grower or the applicator has to send that information to the county ag commissioner. For the rest of restricted materials or other non-soil fumigants, that's a 24-hour window. I will add to that under our system, a applicator has up to 4 days to start the application from the time they said they would start the application. So if they said, so today's Tuesday, and they said they were going to start the application at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, tomorrow, technically they would have 4 days from that time frame to actually start the application. So this information will be present or up on the website during that time frame. So it'd be 5 days, 6 days, depending on the soil application information. So we're providing the current relevant information to you as it is actually occurring. And while Sam is still working on that, I think
I got it, Ken.
All right, perfect. Thank
Just
you.
yeah, so my apologies, y'all. So before I close out my screen, I did want to show the data aspect of this. This is, as Ken mentioned, a critical piece of this. Note some minor tweaks have been changed since I took these screens, but as you can see, if I were to click on one of those 2 or 1s, you'll notice the product name, the active ingredients, and in some cases there may be multiple, the application method, the treated amount, and the EPA registration number. Note we're still waiting on some of that data and just having that data sync over with to our side, which you'll notice the not available. But currently this is the current data we're looking to provide as part of this system. And Mario, looks like you have a question.
Yes, I got a question. When you give permission for them to put the pesticides on the areas, do you have somebody going out there to see that they are wearing the proper safety equipment? Because I've been seeing here in our district, a lot of people have been pouring, pesticides on their area, but they're not wearing the proper suits, proper mask. I mean, they give them like a dust mask instead of a mask for the supposed to, keep the pesticide for them to be breathing. Do you guys send out somebody to inspect they are using the proper gear, or you guys just let them do what they want?
I can answer that. So that's what we do, Mario. We do surveillance on all the PPE, whether they're following all the regulations as far as the application goes. But obviously we're not at every one. And I think at a previous meeting, I begged you to help. If you see that, let us know and we'll go out and do an inspection.
Yeah, I totally understand, but you have to realize and understand, these locations do not have I don't know each and every farm worker or what number of that area is, because there's no signs, there's nothing out there. And if I tell you a certain area, you might get confused in another area. And I want to make sure that if there's some signage on the areas they put in the pesticides, then we could identify where we could call and give this type of information. But we don't have that. We don't have that. I mean, you have to realize
well, all you need is the location of the street. If you've got a cross street, that's enough information, and we can track it down and see who's applying. If there are 10 fields in that area, it's unlikely that there's 10 applications going on at the same time. So if you see somebody that's not wearing the proper PPE or what you believe to not be the proper PPE, let us know. If you don't call us, we can't even begin to uncover anything, right?
No, that's the reason why I'm asking. Do you guys send out somebody out there to
If
see?
you call us, we'll send somebody out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario, for your question. And so this is Glenn is responding from the Kern County Ag Commissioner, and Glenn dropped in his number into the chat, but we can also share that with you via email too. And Phil, he's offering, if you see anyone that you believe to not be wearing the correct PPE or personal protective equipment, to let him know.
Yeah, if you could send me the number, and I will start giving out information to them, like that they start going out there, that they could have the proper gear, the proper training, the proper whatever it takes for them to be safe when they put this pesticide. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mario. Do we have any other questions from the CSC about the demo that we just saw about the statewide notification system, how it works? Go ahead, Gustavo.
Let me respond to Bianca. She's asked this question before, but we do after-hours inspections as well. We do inspections on Sundays, on Saturdays, after hours, not every day, but we do them.
Thanks, Glenn. And Glenn is responding to the question Bianca asked, but the inspections are only done during business hours or after hours. And Glenn is saying they do them after hours and over weekends as well. Thanks, Glenn. Go ahead, Gustavo.
I almost forgot my question, but I remember it again. Any updates? I think, and I've heard this in other meetings, but I think for people that may not been exposed to those updates, the request from communities throughout California, we have been asking for DPR to include a specific site for the applications. What's the current DPR status in that request?
So yeah, again, we're basing the system on the township range, and that's the 1 mile squares that you saw. In order, this is a standard location information system that we have available. The other location type information out there is not as standardized and is extremely difficult for us at this time to incorporate. However, I will say, and I said this earlier, we'll look at this more after we get the system launched, because right now we're really trying to get something out there sooner than later. We have a long process we have to go through in order to get the system up and going. And so we are trying to, this is the information we have now available, and we're going to actually put it in regulation that we will look at this system in the future, or after the system is launched, and reevaluate the system a little bit later down the line. So again, we're trying to get this thing going up as soon as possible with the information we have available. And then we'll have to look into other aspects as far as mapping and other things, and that more refined information at a later time, because there is standardization issues and things of that nature that we need to look at. And not all counties have mapping systems. So it's across the board. It's a little hard to do that at this time, but we will take a look at that in the future.
Thank you. And any idea or any set date that you believe you are going to launch this project, this program?
We're going to be moving into a testing phase again here as you can see, once we get all of our bugs fixed up here. And so we'll probably be doing that next testing phase in the next 6 months or so. But I think the official launch will probably be end of 2024 is when I think we will have something ready to go at this point.
And just, I think just for, the CSC members here, that I think, some of us are participating with DPR in other ways, providing feedback. But I just want to share with the CSCs here that I think although we are being requesting the specific site of the application, and in other meetings we had with DPR, the DPR director Julie Henderson, I think she's committing DPR to continue improving it. And I think we're asking DPR to put that in writing. I think if, as you explained, that you may not be ready to do specific, to report specific site application, but I think ideally, that's what we believe will work best for us, the community. So if you can just, take these comments to your bosses, again, that we want that commitment from DPR. I think you have been doing good work, not doing everything we're asking you, but we see the efforts. But I think if your agency commits to keep working with the community and making those improvements, I think we will feel a bit better, about this process.
But like I said, this will be in the regulation for us to evaluate the system. So we are making a commitment. So.
Thanks, Gustavo. Do we have any other questions for our partners at DPR about the statewide notification system? Or I'll just open it up to any general questions about what you've heard during this subcommittee.
Real quick, if maybe we could circle back to an action item, if DPR could give an update on just a brief update on buffer zones and just a little bit about that work. I don't know if Min, that was your team.
Yeah, I can feel that. I think maybe we should get a little bit more. I'm not sure who posed the question, but some more clarification on what that means, because I'm not completely sure.
Sure, I'll go ahead and relay that action item again. So DPR will update the CC on buffer zones and inform the CSC on actions that can be made to improve zones. I think Gustavo, you had that input during our last meeting in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and jump in. Yeah.
Well, I think the question is, I think is, we want to have that conversation, how can we improve the buffer zones, especially here in Kern County. I think the beginning of, having this 617, but also having this subcommittee, there are other counties that are doing a little bit better in terms of buffer zones, pesticide buffer zones. And I think, and, during the process of approving the SERPs, I think you heard us, I think clear and loud that, we wanted to visit that. And I think Julie Henderson asked on the chapter project, if the county, the Ag Commissioner, Kern County Ag Commissioner is not willing to implement the notification system project or pilot project in chapter, what else, the community wants to see happen. And I think we said, let's visit, the current buffer zone on pesticides here locally and see, how can we improve that. And I think on this one, my understanding is that, Glenn have that power, that authority to do it locally, countywide. I believe that's when the first school buffer zone was approved. That's how it happened, at the county level. And I think we would love to have that conversation, moving forward. How can we better protect the health of the residents through improving or expanding the current buffer zone?
Okay, I think so Gustavo, this is more along the conversation of an additional buffer zone, correct? Not like just a more protected buffer zone for people to, like you mentioned before, like close their windows or something if something was more nearby, like more localized with this group. Did I get that correct?
Yes, I think, I believe, and I don't have that document in front of me, but I believe that, for example, Imperial County have a little bit, stronger buffer zones in terms of the kind of applications, the buffer zone for each, a restricted pesticide, it can be, airplane or tractor or blower or,
Yeah.
those injected in the ground. So, to explore those options, how can we improve those, just an example, I think, in the prior meeting, if I'm correct, we were talking about, pesticides or pesticide application near schools, and I think it was by airplane, and how can we explore those that maybe, changing those from being applied on airplane, just an example, to just, a tractor or something like that, and
Yeah.
we want to have that conversation, how can we improve that, which, it will be good to have that conversation.
Yeah, and that conversation, thank you, Gustavo, for the clarification. That conversation, obviously, we've had here along with other communities throughout the state. I'm not going to speak for Glenn and what he does, but the ag commissioners do have discretion on whether or not they add additional safety restrictions or even cancellation to applications, depending on the conditions that are going on there. I can speak for other communities where if the weather doesn't cooperate, they'll cancel and whatnot, and all the ag commissioners have the capability to do that, and they're more knowledgeable on the ground conditions than we are. To answer the question from DPR side, obviously we've gone about it in a couple of different folds, right? Not directly implementing buffer zones for us would mean a statewide regulation. So I think for us, we've kind of addressed that through Ken and his team, where we're just showed the notification that allows people to have an additional notification and timing to determine what they need to do to either leave the area or take additional action. For my team, we're working specifically with the fumigate 1,3-dichloropropene. And so with that, we're actually doing a statewide regulation to put in setbacks and buffer zones, durations, and all that is driven out of the pilot project that was done in Shafter for the fields, and additional computer modeling that we've been working on through the years. So we're happy to say that is scheduled to complete at the end of this year. So that should become law at the end of the year. And that's one of the ways that we've tried to attack it. I think we've had the conversation of how difficult it would be when it comes to localized buffer zones. And again, I don't know enough about the area to speak about it, but when it comes to stuff like that, it would be, we're looking at different ways to attack it, but the challenge is, because of the fact that we come from a statewide arena, is a little cumbersome.
Yeah.
And Glenn, I think you get your hands up, so I think you.
Yeah, just a follow-up question before we hear from Glenn. Yeah, from DPR, is it possible for you to, I think you may already have it together, like the buffer zones, of all counties, in California, maybe just for us to learn, what we have here in Kern is similar to others, or others, doing better in some ways. Can you have, do you have that information that you may share with us to educate ourselves about, potential improvements in the buffer zone in Kern? And I think I'm saying buffer zone, I think there is another official name, but, it's a buffer of applications between,
Yeah, I can take a look to. I mean, obviously, what we have is state reg. So the regulations that are across the state for each of the different chemicals state different conditions on how far, or how much you can apply, and what application method you can apply. What like there's a lot of different parameters that go into it. I don't know if we have mainly because I don't think a lot of people have like additional like buffer zone kind of like built into their community, to their county. I'll check on that and I'll check with the other county ag commissioners. Maybe there's something there that I'm not familiar with, but yeah, we can take a look and see if we can pull something together, but I'm not familiar with like another county having something in excess of what we have that's not make more of a tied to more of the uniqueness of like the county. So it's, you know, different. I mean, coastal regions are more windy, so they tend to err towards more different application methods. So something along that line, I think, is what you're asking for, and I can have my team dig into it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, any information that you think may, you know, inform us, you know, to look for those potential options and yeah, and if possible, you know, I think you said maybe that's the way to go, you know. Are any other counties that have something on top of what the state buffer zone is? I think that may be a way to find, you know, are there other counties doing it a little bit more than they are requested or they are supposed to be doing?
Yeah, we can take a look. I think we can key out on fumigants for sure, because fumigants is what my team works on specifically. And then we can actually look against the use in that area too. I think the use in that area is also consistent with the fumigant use. So we can probably get something maybe a little bit more targeted for Arvin, Lamont.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Min, and thanks, Gustavo. Glenn, I did see your hand up, but I see it back down. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, the meeting's over, I can talk, but, you know, as far as the buffer zones, what Gustavo is talking about is what we call permit conditions. And those permit conditions allow local ag commissioners to address issues that they may be having locally in their county, which other counties don't have. DPR does issue suggested permit conditions for a variety of materials or types of materials, and Kern is at least as restrictive as the minimum suggested permit conditions, and in some cases we have more restrictive permit conditions because of local issues. California is a big state, and as Min touched on, you know, the same conditions on the coast don't exist in the Central Valley and don't exist in the desert. It's much more windy in the desert. I think Gustavo has mentioned before regarding school buffer zones, Imperial County has greater buffer zones than Kern County. This is true. And I contacted Imperial to ask them about that. And the reason they have those conditions is because A, it's windier in the desert than it is in Kern. And they had specific issues around schools. They were having drift incidents at schools in 2000 and 2001. And so they implemented permit conditions that were unique to Imperial County. And because those situations weren't necessarily existing in other counties. So what would it take in order for Kern County to make changes such as that? It would be a pattern of incidents or a pattern of problems that we saw, whether it's drift or other. So that's what it would take. So to answer Bianca's question, yeah, if you want stronger buffer zones, why don't you suggest everybody to have more drift incidents? Then we'll have stronger buffer zones. No, see, Gustavo, that's not smart. We don't want that, do we? Right.
No, I find that comment disrespectful for us, for me especially. I think we have I think the guidelines or share agreements of be respectful of others, and I think even if you're not too aggressive on your tone, but you know the words are offensive for me.
Thanks, Gustavo, for sharing that. I do see we're very close to that. We're past the end of our meeting. Mario, if you want to make one quick comment before we end.
Yeah, I'm seeing that what we have to do is go back to the drawing board and let's try to fix up these type of problems, even though they're not from our county or is from our county. That's what we are here for, to make change. And I feel, Gustavo, you're doing a really great job. I admire you. And I see DPR is trying their best to try to fix up the problem. I like that. But let's put our heads together like that. We could try to solve the type of problems that we have. And like that, we could create something positive out of this type of meeting. And I feel that if we all get together, we will find solutions how to better our community. Like that, we won't have these type of problems, saying mistakes, because we don't need them, because people get hurt, people die, things like that. We don't need them. We need something to fix up the problem now and have a better future for the people who are around pesticides.
Thanks, Mario. We definitely hear that need for collaboration. And that's why I think this is a great space for us to all kind of meet together to discuss these things. Appreciate that. And we are over time right now, so I want to be respectful. We have a lot of agencies, and I'm sure lots of folks that want to get back to their evenings. And so I just wanted to thank everyone so much for spending their time with us. And we've heard some really great updates just generally about sustainable pest management, and then also saw the demo on statewide notification. But also I heard just generally from DPR lots of opportunities for CSC members to stay engaged with the process. So if you're interested in kind of staying involved with the Sustainable Pest Management Working Group, that's something you can reach out to them for. And any feedback on this, the statewide notification system, I know they're open to hearing that as well. Bianca, I see your hand. I'm wondering is it a quick clarifying note?
I just want to give a comment. I think these meetings should be a little bit longer because we do have some lingering comments that should be addressed. If I lose connection, I'm sorry. We're having really bad reception here. And I wanted to address Glenn's comments on the way he wants to address the buffer zones. How many of our children do you need to be dead or have any drift incidents so you could do some action? This is ridiculous coming from a NAC commissioner that supposedly is there to help us and protect us. I want DPR to listen to his comments directly and go back to Julie, do a drawing board, because we do have funding here for the pesticide. And for you to give us that remark is unbelievable for parents that we've been working for this process to work, and for having one individual attacking one of our potential projects, just bringing it down to the ground is horrific. I'm frustrated. I could imagine how residents feel at the moment, because we are here to help out the community, to bring work in the area, and for one individual just to bring it down and giving a comment like, we need more incidents so we could do something better. That's unremarkable. We need something better. We need the state to step up and do something here locally, because we can't have individuals like these giving us these horrific remarks to residents and to parents. I'm including myself, because my child does get exposed, and it's so angering that somebody could give us a remark like this. You want our children to be exposed? Then what else can we do else? We need the state to step. We need the state, and we need the area.
And if you had a quick response, again, we're at the end of our meeting here, but I want to leave time and space.
Just to clarify, I didn't say that I wanted anybody to get sick. I was just trying to simplify it. And in simple terms, that's exactly it. If we have more incidents, that leads to more regulations. That's how anything happens. On the flip side of the coin, the opposite is true too. If we're not having any incidents, why do we need to implement something more restrictive? Because clearly what we have works.
All right, thanks
I
for
wanna-
that update.
I want to say something about that. It's just, he had to realize and understand something. We don't want anybody to get hurt or anybody to, have.
Neither do I. Neither do I.
But the thing is that we have to realize and understand, that's the reason why we want stricter rules, because we are seeing it. Might not happen right now, but it will happen. We don't want it to happen. That's why we want stricter rules. Because the rules.
I don't want it to happen either.
Okay, the rules and regulations and the boundaries are broken. And we have to realize that. We have to try to fix it. That's why we are here, to try to fix it.
That's why I need your help, Mario.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and I'll be honest with you. A lot of things that we do might feel like we are jumping the gun, but the thing is that we are trying to have safety. We want safety for our kids. We want safety for our people. We want safety for the people who are working with these type of chemicals. We don't want crying mothers. We don't want crying fathers. We want to feel safe. And that's the point, to feel safe. That's our.
Thanks. I hear that, Mario. I hear from across the board, all sides in this meeting, the desire to keep our families safe and to improve conditions here in the Arvin Lamont community. So thanks all for your comments and for your passion on this topic. The next space we'll have kind of for this pesticide subcommittee, this is a meeting that we have every other month. And so we'll plan to have our next pesticide subcommittee meeting on September 26th. And we invite everyone to join us once again for that meeting. And we have some topics in mind, but we definitely are open to hearing what folks want to discuss. So if you have any topics you want to bring to the next meeting, please email or call us. And we're happy to kind of work that into the next agenda for our September meeting. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us, especially our partners at DPR for providing those updates, and have a great evening, everyone.
Buenas noches.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Muchas gracias. Bye.
Thank you. And thank you to Amelia and Tanya for interpreting.
And be safe.
Thanks, Mario. Take care.